My name is Corbin Halloway, and I died on March 21st, 2017, in a dusty stretch of southern Afghanistan that never even had a name on the map. That was the day my life split in half. The day time stopped and eternity opened. I died face down in the dirt, lungs full of smoke, my ears ringing from a blast of an IED that left my body broken and my soul hanging in the balance. I was a corporal in the U.S. Army, stationed in Helmand Province. My unit had been patrolling a corridor outside Lashkar Gah for weeks, clearing roads, sweeping compounds, and dodging sniper fire. There was nothing glamorous about it. It was sunburn and silence and sweat-soaked uniforms that never really dried. The locals looked through us. The desert wind felt like it was always whispering, "You don't belong here." On that Tuesday morning, I remember squinting into the wind, the grit biting my face like little needles. We had just passed a known checkpoint, one we'd cleared twice before. I was second in the column, my buddy Roscoe walking point. We didn't see it. There was no shimmer, no wire, no shadow. Just boom. It sounded like the earth tore in half. I didn't even feel the blast at first. Just a strange numbness and a loud humming in my skull, like I'd stuck my head in a church bell right as it rang. Then came the burn. My back, my chest, my face, like they were on fire. I tried to move, but I couldn't. I was face down in the dust, my rifle somewhere behind me, my breath shallow and sharp. I knew I was dying. I could feel it. But then something even stranger happened. I started floating, not metaphorically, literally. One moment I was in my body, screaming silently inside my head. The next I was above it, drifting, weightless, calm. I looked down and saw myself crumpled in the dirt, blood soaking through my fatigues. Roscoe was down too. His legs weren't right. Someone was shouting into the comms. Medics were already moving, but none of it touched me. It was like the chaos was happening behind a glass wall. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't angry. I just felt quiet. Then everything began to shift. The battlefield began to dim. Not like the sun going down, more like the physical world was fading and something else was pushing through. I turned my gaze upward, and the dust-stained sky split open like a curtain being pulled back. And that's when I saw the light. I know how that sounds, but I swear to you, this wasn't just some hazy brightness. It was alive. The light had depth, warmth, even intelligence. It wasn't blinding, it was welcoming. And as I drifted into it, I felt all the pain fall away, all the trauma, the guilt, the tension I'd carried for years in my chest. Gone. I was in a realm I don't have words for. It wasn't a place in the traditional sense. It was peace embodied. I don't know if my feet were touching anything. I don't know if I even had feet. But I knew I was standing in the presence of something holy, not distant or abstract, personal, loving, terrifying in its purity, but irresistible in its pull. Then came the presence. He didn't have to introduce himself. I knew it was Jesus. There was no glowing name tag, no chorus of angels shouting his identity. I just knew, like I'd known him all along, but had somehow forgotten. His presence was overwhelming, but not in a crushing way. It was like every nerve in my being was vibrating with the truth of who he was, who I was, and how far I'd strayed from it. I fell to my knees. Or maybe I just felt like I did. I couldn't speak. I couldn't hide. In his presence, every layer of my life peeled back. Every lie I'd told. Every person I'd hated in silence. Every time I said I believed in God, but lived like I didn't. It all rose to the surface like oil and water. I expected judgment. Instead, I got compassion. He looked at me, not with condemnation, but with the kind of love that breaks you. I could feel him seeing every scar on my soul and not flinching. He didn't speak right away. He just let me be seen. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to stay there forever. But then he spoke. It wasn't with his mouth. It was deeper, like his voice moved through me, not just around me. Corbin, tell them they don't have to live in fear. That was it. One sentence. But it hit me like a thunderclap. Tell them they don't have to live in fear. I didn't understand what he meant at first. Fear of what? Death? War? Judgment? I had lived with fear for years without even realizing it. Fear of not being enough. Fear of dying young. Fear of failing. Fear of being forgotten. Jesus didn't say, tell them I'll fix everything. He didn't say, tell them life gets easier. He said, tell them they don't have to live in fear. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Fear is the prison most people never see the bars of. We carry it in our wallets, our marriages, our military contracts. We medicate it, distract it, work ourselves to death to outrun it. But fear is always lurking until we meet the one who's bigger than it. Jesus wasn't handing me a pep talk. He was giving me a mission. And just like that, the light began to fade. The warmth started pulling back. I felt something tug on me, something physical, something painful. I was being pulled back into the dirt, back into my ruined body, back into the smoke and the screams and the agony. And I didn't want to go, but I knew I had to, because I had a message. And that message wasn't just for soldiers. It was for you. The first thing I felt when I came back wasn't breath. It was pain. Searing, blinding, bone-deep pain. My body screamed in every direction. I gasped, choking on the metallic taste of blood and smoke. Bright light slammed into my eyes. A voice barked something in a language my mind barely processed. Hands pressed on my chest. There was shouting, pressure, needles, beeping, and then blackness again. I came in and out of consciousness for what felt like days. When I finally stabilized, I was in a military hospital in Germany, wrapped in bandages and held together by steel rods and stitched flesh. My left arm was gone from the elbow down. My right leg was splinted and immobilized. They told me later I had suffered a massive concussive brain injury, shrapnel in my spine, and burns over 35% of my body. But the real damage wasn't physical. It was spiritual, because my soul had been elsewhere. I had seen Jesus. I had stood in the light. And now I was back here, trapped in a bed, surrounded by machines, filled with questions and fear. The irony wasn't lost on me. The one thing Jesus had told me, tell them they don't have to live in fear, was the one thing I couldn't seem to shake. The fear crept in slowly, like smoke under a closed door. What if it wasn't real? What if it was brain trauma? What if I imagined it? What if it was just chemicals and hallucinations and wishful thinking? The doctor said I was lucky to be alive, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I had left heaven and crash-landed back into a broken world that couldn't understand what I had seen. No one could, not my commanding officer, not the counselor who offered me a stress ball and breathing exercises, not even my mom, who flew in from Austin and cried at my bedside for 2 days straight. They all said I had survived, but they didn't know what it felt like to have died and come back with truth burning in your chest. They didn't know what it meant to carry a message you didn't ask for, a message for a world that didn't want to hear it. In the silence of those hospital nights, I would stare at the ceiling and whisper the words over and over like a lifeline. Tell them they don't have to live in fear. But how? I was just a corporal, a busted-up soldier with more scars and strength. I had never preached a sermon. I'd barely opened a Bible. My idea of spiritual depth used to be those dog tags that said, "No religious preference." Why me? That question haunted me. And Jesus didn't answer right away. For weeks I wrestled. I doubted. I replayed the vision again and again in my head. I'd beg God to give me another encounter, to prove to me that what I saw wasn't just some dying man's fantasy. I wanted signs, miracles, voices, anything. Instead, he gave me silence. But somehow, even in that silence, I felt watched. Not by nurses or doctors, but by something holy, something patient. Like Jesus was still there, just beyond the veil, letting me struggle, not punishing me, not abandoning me, just letting me feel the weight of it all. And then, one night, something shifted. I was alone in my room, everyone else asleep. My pain meds were wearing off, and I was too tired to fight the agony. So I just lay there, still, aching. That's when I felt it. The same presence. It wasn't visual this time. No light, no voice, just peace. It rolled over me like warm oil wrapping around my heart, slowing my breath. And in that stillness, I remembered something Jesus hadn't said, but that had been true in his presence. Fear only has power where love hasn't been fully allowed in. I didn't need another vision. I had already seen him, and I had been seen by him. That night, I whispered something I hadn't said since childhood. Jesus, I'm afraid, but I trust you. And that's when I felt it break. The fear didn't vanish all at once, but it loosened its grip. The lies in my head quieted. The trauma still lived in my body, but it no longer owned my future. I realized that fear wasn't something to be cured in a moment. It was something to walk through with him. And if I was going to walk, I needed to start speaking. A week later, I asked for a Bible. The chaplain brought one in, the kind with a camouflage cover and thin pages. I started with Matthew, page 1 of the New Testament. I read slowly, clumsily. My hand shook turning the pages. But as I read the words of Jesus, something clicked deep in me. This was the same voice I had heard, the same person I had seen, the same one who told me, Tell them. So I started telling people, not with big speeches, just conversations. First, it was another wounded soldier in the recovery ward. His name was DJ. He lost both his legs in a blast 3 weeks after mine. I told him what I'd seen. He stared at me for a long time, then said, I never believed in God before, but maybe he believes in me. That was the beginning. Then I told a nurse, then a physical therapist, then a room full of other burn patients during group therapy. Some listened, some rolled their eyes, some wept. But each time I spoke the words, you don't have to live in fear, something shifted, like the atmosphere changed, like something inside them stood up a little taller. And I knew this message wasn't just mine to carry. It was theirs to live. That was the beginning of purpose, of redemption, of mission. Because while I had gone to Afghanistan to fight a visible war, I had returned to fight a spiritual one. And I was just getting started. I'll never forget the moment I stepped off the plane back in the States. It wasn't triumphant. No marching band. No welcome home banner. Just sterile airport lights, awkward stares, and the cold hum of reality sinking in. I walked, hobbled, through the terminal on crutches, my left arm gone below the elbow, my leg still stiff in its brace, and a half-healed burn crawling across the left side of my face like a permanent brand. People didn't know whether to thank me or look away. My mom was waiting with my uncle at baggage claim. She hugged me like she was afraid I'd disappear again. I didn't cry. Not then. I was too numb. My body was here, but part of my heart was still there, somewhere between the blast crater and the light. I had left something behind. Or maybe I had brought something back. The first few weeks home were brutal. Everything was familiar but foreign. The sound of birds, the smell of coffee, the TV buzzing in the background, all normal things that felt strangely loud. I'd sit in my childhood bedroom, now outfitted with a medical bed and a stack of pill bottles, and wonder how I was supposed to be normal again. PTSD is real, but what they don't always talk about is spiritual dislocation. When your soul has tasted eternity and your body is still trapped in time. I kept hearing his voice, not audibly, but like a drumbeat in my chest. Tell them they don't have to live in fear. The words follow me everywhere. Grocery store aisles, traffic lights, hospital waiting rooms. But how do you start? How do you walk into a world addicted to fear? Fear of failure, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, and say, you don't need to carry this anymore. I died and I saw Jesus, and he gave me this message just for you. So I started small. One night at my mom's church, they asked if anyone wanted to give a testimony. I hadn't planned on saying anything, but my hand went up before I could stop it. I stood at the front of a small congregation, 40 people, maybe, and I told them the truth, not the polished, poetic version. Just raw, honest. I died. I saw Jesus. He told me to tell you, you don't have to live in fear. There was no dramatic music, no lights, no applause. But one woman in the back began to cry. Then another stood and said, I've had panic attacks for 7 years. I've never told anyone. That night, A seed was planted. From there, it grew slowly. A podcast invited me on, a small one for veterans with PTSD. I shared my story. Within days, my inbox was flooded. I've been at church my whole life, but never believed God was personal. Until now. I lost a brother overseas. I've been terrified to live since. Your words gave me something. I'm not religious, but I felt peace listening to you. I want to know more. I realized the fear Jesus was talking about wasn't just bullets and bombs. It was invisible fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of rejection. Fear of death. Fear of not matching. Fear of facing God and realizing you never truly knew him. And so I kept speaking, not because I was brave, but because I was compelled. Something in me had been rewired. I didn't crave praise. I didn't fear judgment. I just wanted to obey. But obedience isn't always welcomed. Some church leaders told me to tone it down. One said I was too focused on hell and not enough on hope. A news outlet interviewed me and ran a story titled, "Injured Veteran Claims Celebrity-Style Encounter with Jesus." Friend from high school messaged me things like, "Bro, did you hit your head harder than we thought?" An old squad mate commented on a post, "This the same Corbin who used to curse out command and sneak whiskey into base?" LOL. They weren't wrong. I was that guy, but I wasn't anymore. That's the thing about grace. It doesn't care who you used to be. It just wants to rewrite your ending. One night, I spoke at a small gathering of combat veterans in a church basement in Houston. No stage, no lights, just metal chairs and stale coffee. There was a guy in the back, huge, quiet, arms crossed. I shared the whole story. The blast, the floating, the presence of Jesus, the message, and afterward, as people shuffled out, the big guy stayed seated. I approached him slowly. He looked up and said, "I haven't slept through the night in 9 years. Then, after a pause, he added, "But I felt something when you talked, not just words, something like peace." I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "That's him." He nodded. I want it. We prayed right there, in that dim basement, over a folding table littered with donut crumbs. A grown man, combat-hardened, weeping like a child as he whispered the name of Jesus for the first time in his life. That's when I understood why I came back. Not to be inspirational, not to write a book or start a speaking career, but to be a messenger, to carry the same hope that pulled me out of fear and offer it to people drowning in it. People don't need polish. They need peace, real peace. And I had met the one who gives it. I started ending every talk the same way, looking people in the eyes, saying the same words he gave me. You don't have to live in fear. You're not alone. He's real, and he's waiting. It's strange what sticks with you. You'd think the most unforgettable part of dying would be the explosion or the pain or even the floating sensation as I left my body behind. But no, what I remember most is the stillness in the presence of Jesus. The way he didn't flinch when he looked at me. The way he didn't point at my scars or my failures or my past. The way his love wasn't loud, but so steady it shattered every fear inside me without a single word, except for one. Tell them they don't have to live in fear. That's it. That was my assignment. That's why I was sent back. Not to become a spiritual influencer or start a movement. Not to go viral or chase attention, but to deliver a message. A simple truth in a world that's forgotten how to breathe. You don't have to live in fear. Not when the news is chaos. Not when the cancer report is bad. Not when the world doesn't believe you. Not when you've been wounded, physically, mentally, spiritually. Not even when you're dying in the desert, dust like I was. Because fear isn't your identity. Jesus is. He didn't promise us easy lives. He didn't promise safe deployments or healed families or perfect churches. What he promised was himself, his presence in the fire, his peace in the storm, his hand in the fall. That's why he said, do not be afraid, not because there's nothing scary in this world, but because he is greater than everything in it. I spent so many years looking strong on the outside while crumbling on the inside, wearing the uniform, playing tough, carrying weapons but never laying down my heart, until he met me on the battlefield, until he told me that fear wasn't a life sentence, that I could be free. And now I'm telling you the same thing. Whoever you are, wherever you're watching this, whatever you're facing, you don't have to keep living with the weight on your chest. You don't have to keep pretending you're okay. You don't have to stay chained to the past, to shame, to dread, to the lies in your head that whisper, you'll never be whole. Because Jesus is more real than trauma, more powerful than death, and more present than fear. I know because I met him, and I'll never be the same. Since I started sharing my story, I've heard from people all over the world. A single mom in Nevada who said she hadn't slept in months because of panic attacks. A teenage boy in Nigeria who wrote, I didn't want to live anymore, but then I saw your video, and now I'm praying for the first time. A man in a hospital bed in Illinois who said he lost both legs in a motorcycle crash. He told me, I've always believed in God, but I never believed he cared about me until now. That's the power of the message. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you. Because fear is no respecter of persons. It comes for soldiers and students, for moms and musicians, for pastors and addicts, for people who look like they have it all together, and people who know they're falling apart. But so does Jesus. He comes for everyone. And right now, I believe he's coming for you, not with a lightning bolt, not with a guilt trip, but with open arms and a steady voice that says, you don't have to live in fear. Come home to me. I'll carry what you've been trying to hide. I'll sit with you in the dark. I'll walk with you out of it. Just say yes. So if that's you, if you feel that ache in your chest right now, that tug you can't explain, that's not emotion. That's not manipulation. That's Jesus calling you out of the shadows, out of anxiety, out of addiction, out of fear, and into freedom. If you're done living in fear, say it out loud. Don't stay silent. Say it right now, wherever you are. Say, Jesus, I surrender. Say, take my fear. Say, I want you. And when you've said it, come tell us. Drop a comment below and write, no more fear. I choose Jesus. I surrender. Or just he met me to let the world know that fear doesn't own you anymore, that you're not going back to the way things were, that the God who met me on a battlefield can meet you in your living room, your hospital bed, your office, your silence. You don't have to live in fear. Not anymore. I'm Corbin Halloway. I died on March 21st, 2017, but I came back with a message, and now that message belongs to you.